All right, welcome back to another edition of We Rise Fighting Labor Podcast. We bring you today's labor news, history, and analysis from the U.S. and around the world. This is a podcast you listen to with your fellow workers organizing on the shop floor. This is a podcast you listen to before walking into your union meeting. As always, I'm Rico Rutia here with my co-host Brian Pfeiffer. This week we bring you reflections on Labor Day, news about Kaiser Permanente workers in Colorado, an update from Teamsters Local 662, the United Auto Workers, American Airline workers, and of course my favorite, the Anderson Economic Group. But before we get into all that, as always, we like to open up some space for some music. Brian is going to introduce today's artist.
All right, listeners, we're here on the eve of Labor Day 2023. We send well wishes of solidarity to all those participating in parades, protests, rallies, and other actions on Labor Day this year. We begin with a special 2023 Labor Day solidarity email message from the Railroad Workers United email that was just sent out today. Quote, whether you are off work or on the job Monday, please take the time to honor, remember, and celebrate Labor Day. This is our day. So much of what workers take for granted: overtime pay, holiday pay, vacations, sick leave, workers' comp, FMLA, Social Security, railroad retirement, safer working conditions, the basic 8-hour day, seniority, and more, only came about because workers organized and fought, some losing their lives collectively for these things. Absent our solidarity, we would have none of the above, and there certainly would be no such thing as Labor Day itself, end quote. That's from the Railroad Workers United in a recent email message, sending out solidarity to Labor Day participants across the world. To celebrate here, we're going to kick off our show today, We Rise Fighting, this episode with Sister Rhiannon Giddens' version of Freedom Highway. It's well known as a civil and human rights song, but of course also a Labor Day tradition song, sung on many picket lines in the South, but also across the country. All right, here's Sister Rhiannon Giddens singing Freedom Highway.
March down Freedom Highway, oh yeah, marching each and every day. March down Freedom Highway, oh yeah, marching each and every day. Made up my mind that I won't turn around. Made up my mind that I won't turn around. There's just one thing I can't understand, my friend. Why some folks think freedom is not designed for all men. There are so many people living their lives perplexed, wondering in their mind what's gonna happen next. That's why we're gonna march down Freedom Highway. Oh yeah, marching each and every day. March down Freedom Highway. Oh yeah, marching each and every day. Made up my mind that I won't turn around. Made up my mind
All right, welcome back, everyone, and happy Labor Day to all workers in the United States, all workers around the world. Labor Day is coming up this Monday, and this being a labor show and really delving into all subjects related to labor, I decided to just jot some things down, just some reflections as far as Labor Day today. Honestly, I'm thankful. I'm thankful to all workers, union and non-union, who struggled so we could have things like the weekend, overtime pay, health and safety standards in the workplace, sick days, vacations, pensions, the minimum wage, wages better than minimum wage. I'd like to thank unions for not letting the bosses harass us and constantly breathe down our necks. I'd like to thank all workers for all the different types of strikes that they have used to stand up to the bosses. I would like to thank the labor movement and workers and just the spirit of solidarity that gives the fortitude to others in the struggle. I'd like to thank unions for being an integral part of the civil rights movement. And also just shout out, and I'd like to thank today's struggles. You know, the auto workers, the Teamsters, Starbucks workers, Amazon, the railway workers, graduate workers, longshore workers, teachers, healthcare workers, agricultural workers, hotel workers, and all the other workers who struggle against exploitation but don't get their name in the newspaper. Thank you. Thank you. This Labor Day, I encourage people to look around, look around you, look around your community, your city, your town, whatever it may be. Look at the homes, the walls, the desks, the food, the digital devices, the streets, the bridges, the factories, the schools, the skyscrapers, the hospitals, the great monuments, the machines, the warplanes, the methods of transportation. Everything is made by the producers in society, by the workers in this society. The labor of the workers creates the wealth in this society, but somehow those workers are often living paycheck to paycheck, working up to 80 hours per week, sometimes 40 of those hours just to afford basic healthcare or rent. Meanwhile, business owners, shareholders, and CEOs sit on top of incomprehensible wealth, just like Uncle Scrooge in the money bin from DuckTales, swimming in it, the kind of wealth that you can't even count or spend in a lifetime. The wealth that was created by workers but kept by owners. So we at We Rise Fighting envision a better world than that. We want to see democracy flourish from the political arenas to the workplace, to all social institutions, to the home. Brian talks about the 2011 struggle in Wisconsin a lot. What if on top of taking over the state capitol, the workers had placed a sign on the door that said, closed to corporations, closed to CEOs, closed to shareholders? We envision a world that is run for human need and not corporate greed. Capitalism is structured so that a handful of people with immeasurable wealth dictate the course of society. We can do a lot better than that. That's part of why we talk about union democracy so much. We want our unions to be tiny microcosms of what a larger democratic society could look like. We want our labor and social struggles to be democratic so all voices are heard, so that those struggles and voices can go on and create a better world than this. So happy Labor Day to everyone. Solidarity to all. Just trying to send you folks, something you don't normally hear at the Labor Day picnic where hot dogs and beers are distributed. Wanted to give you a little something extra this Labor Day, something that can help in a fight, some solidarity, some consciousness. So thank you everyone for listening to our show. Up next is Brian with some news on Teamsters Local 662. What is going on there, Brian?
All right, Rick, in that spirit of class struggle, we have an announcement here at We Rise Fighting. We're happy to announce that the Teamsters 662 have ratified their contracts. We've been talking about our fellow workers here on the show for weeks. Since they've been on strike. They were on strike for about 2 months. And according to the leadership of Teamsters Local 662 on their Facebook page, quote, New Dairy Select Milk members in De Pere, Wisconsin ratified a new 3-year agreement, August 31st, 2023, ending the 53-day labor dispute. Thank you to all the locals across the country, the local community and beyond, and everyone in between that supported and stood in solidarity with the members. This strike was over affordable and enhanced health insurance benefits and other matters. Also, one day earlier, on August 30th, 2023, Members of Local 662 at Leinenkugel's Molson Coors that have been on strike for 51 days in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, which is in northwestern Wisconsin, ratified a new collective bargaining agreement with improved provisions. Both strikes were won with the courageous workers fighting back against outrageous corporate greed and received support from across the world from labor and community supporters, including right here at We Rise Fighting. This podcast reported extensively on both strikes, helped with picket line support, strike fund support, and communications. And we, of course, send solidarity to the members of Teamsters 662. Right on, and congratulations, and hope you and your loved ones have a wonderful Labor Day weekend, and especially tomorrow celebrating your victory against the greedy, filthy bosses at Leinenkugel's and at New Dairy Milk Select. Solidarity, fellow workers.
Indeed, solidarity to Local 662, and hats off. Thank you for, flexing some muscle in that struggle. I'm sure there's lessons to be learned from there, and I hope I get to learn some more of them. So solidarity and hats off to Local 662. Up next, I have news from Colorado, actually, Kaiser Permanente workers. So there was an article in Denver7.com. The headline reads, Kaiser Permanente responds after Colorado union votes to authorize potential strike. Now, it is true they did respond, but I did take that part out of the article just for full transparency. I feel that Kaiser Permanente has whatever microphone it needs to convey whatever ideas it wants around labor negotiations, and I didn't want to give it extra broadcast here on this show. So I edited this article out just a little bit, and it reads as follows. A union representing 3,000 Kaiser Permanente workers in Colorado voted to authorize a strike if a new labor agreement can't be reached with the healthcare giant by the end of the month, which is when the current contract expires. On Fridays, the Service Employees International Union, SEIU, Local 105, voted in favor of a strike authorization should it become necessary. And here we begin with a quote. Quote, we've got an overwhelming 99% approval for a possible strike, said Eric Coleman, a Kaiser Permanente customer service representative and steward with SEIU Local 105. The quote continues. What we're doing is we want to provide better care to our patients, so that's what we're fighting for. Coleman said the union doesn't want to strike, but he said healthcare workers in Colorado and other parts of the country have been stretched thin, especially following the COVID-19 pandemic. The quote continues, they're stretched to their limit trying to do the work, said Coleman, who said some employees like LPNs are doing the work of multiple people due to staffing shortages. We're looking for living wages that will attract additional staff so they can help out. He says the current wages and staffing levels not only hurt workers, but patients. And the quote continues, our patients have long wait times, whether they're going to the pharmacy, whether they're trying to schedule an appointment, mammograms, colonoscopies, you're going to wait a long time, Coleman said. What we have to do, somebody has to say enough is enough and put their foot down and make a change. SEIU says strike authorization votes will continue for the next couple of weeks across the country. The union says if a nationwide strike happens, it will be the largest in U.S. history. Well, hats off to SEIU Local 105. Just letting folks in Colorado and Denver know that this is taking place, and Kaiser Permanente workers may need our solidarity, helping that get out there. Just in case there's a picket line, let's all be prepared for that. So we will keep you updated on the developments of the Kaiser Permanente SEIU Local 105 struggle here in Denver and in Colorado. And moving right along, we're going back to the United Auto Workers. What is going on over there, Brian?
All right, Rick. Just like the Teamsters all last summer, practice pickets are going on all across the country for the United Auto Workers members leading these practice pickets. The potential strike could be soon, depending upon how the bosses respond to the very just demands of the UAW. So the UAW members at the big three auto corporations, the current contract expires September 14th at midnight, and the contract campaign actions are taking place all across the country. Similar to Teamsters members at UPS this summer, UAW members are engaging in practice pickets, and materials are available for download at uaw.org. That's uaw.org. And that includes posters, placards, things members and supporters as well can download from that website to print those out and bring those to the picket line, wherever they may be, the practice picket lines. Quote, community members, families, and workers are standing together for economic justice on and off the job. Our collective power comes from our solidarity. We are united and ready to back up those words with collective action, declares the UAW on its Facebook page, which also includes numerous photos and videos of practice pickets. And please share those, listeners, as widely as you can. It's very important to share what our fellow workers are doing on the picket lines with the UAW, as well as all across the country and other. It really is a morale booster. We've been seeing this with the writers and actors sharing each other's information, and workers all across the country engaged in a variety of different labor actions. So we wish our UAW fellow workers well. And here at We Rise Fighting, we of course support the members on the lines and do everything we can to support them to demand and win a just contract. All right, Rick, what do you got next?
Kind of continuing with that, actually. So found an article in the New York Times about the auto strike, kind of, sort of, we'll get to it. But the headline reads, auto strike looms, threatening to shut down Detroit's Big Three. And this article is from today, actually, September 3rd. The article reads as follows. With their contract expiring September 14th, the United Auto Workers and the companies are far apart in talks. A walkout could take a big economic toll. The United Auto Workers Union and the three Detroit auto workers have less than 2 weeks to negotiate a new labor contract, and a strike of some sorts seems increasingly likely. The union's president, Sean Fame, has primed rank-and-file members to be prepared to walk off the job if the union's list of demands for improved wages and benefits are not met. A strike against one of the companies, especially a prolonged stoppage, could send an economic jolt through several Midwestern states and crimp the profits of General Motors, Ford Motor, or Stellantis. GM workers walked out for 40 days in 2019 before reaching an agreement. A strike against all three, a step the union has never taken, but one Mr. Fain has said is willing to call for this year, could have a notable impact on the broader U.S. economy. Listen to where all this is going. Listen to where all this is going. Could have a noticeable impact on the broader U.S. economy. Here come the clouds. Here come the rain clouds. And here comes the rain. Here, this is the quote. If that happens, even a short strike would impact economies throughout Michigan and across the nation, said Patrick Anderson, the chief executive of Anderson Economic Group in East Lansing, Michigan, the same Anderson Economic Group that we've been talking about in several of our podcasts. And just to bring the point home, why is this important? Because this is the organization, this is the quote unquote economic group, the think tank, whatever you want to call it, that puts out the soundbite in the media, that puts out the soundbite that this is going to cost $5.6 billion if it's prolonged for 10 days or whatever the case may be. And it's important because it can set fear in the hearts of workers and also in the hearts of, for instance, the politicians who supposedly represent the interests of workers. So, for instance, going back to the railway struggle, 5 of 6 members of the squad voted to shut down the railway struggle, to shut down the railway strike. Why? Because the big soundbite that was going around at the time was $2 billion a day, $2 billion a day, $2 billion a day. It affects everything from the workers to the politicians. So I think it's important to look at this organization because it's producing those numbers, but also because it's producing those numbers with no substantiation. It's pulling them out of thin air. The thing about economics is that everything affects everything, right? So yeah, an auto worker strike is going to affect everything. It's going to affect mom and pop shops. It's going to affect restaurants. It's going to affect everything that's attached to the lives of these auto workers and the industry. It's going to affect an immeasurable amount of people around the world ultimately because this production is international. So it's going to affect a lot. Everything affects everything in economics. And so if you're going to do an economic study of any type, you really have to define what we're looking at, which is something that Anderson Economic Group has failed to do. And that's why we talk about it on this show, because they failed to do that, but they produce these sound bites, these numbers that the media runs with, and scares the shit out of everyone with. And, that's what I was saying. Here come the rain clouds. Here comes the gloom and doom. So that's why we spend so much time on this. That's why I'm spending so much time on this. The article continues. The talks are playing out as automakers are spending tens of billions of dollars to transition to electric vehicles, which require fewer workers to assemble than traditional gasoline-powered cars and trucks. The terms of the new contract will determine how both auto workers and the companies fare in an EV-centric industry, electric vehicle-centric industry. At the same time, significant wage and benefit gains could provide a tailwind for a union movement that has been gaining strength against several industries. There are political stakes as well. President Biden has declared that, quote, the UAW deserves a contract that sustains the middle class, unquote, and has named a White House liaison to the union and the automakers. But the UAW has withheld an endorsement of his re-election bid so far, partly because of the concern over the union's share of EVs related jobs created with federal subsidies. An agreement before the contracts expire on September 14th is still possible, and talks could continue beyond that date without a walkout. But Mr. Fain has repeatedly said he views September 14th as a deadline, a day the strike could begin. He was elected to the UAW presidency last year as an insurgent, ousting the incumbent on a vow to take a more combative and confrontational approach in the talks than his recent predecessors. The auto industry as a whole, including foreign-based companies with operations in the United States, makes up 3% of the country's gross domestic product. Gross domestic product is a measurement of the size of an economy, if you will, if anyone's not familiar. The article continues. A 10-day strike against the 3 Detroit automakers would result in total wage losses of $859 million and manufacturers' losses of $989 million, according to estimates by Mr. Anderson's firm. This time around, I didn't even look at it, but I will look at it during the week because it'll burn me. But this time I had to walk away from it. I just had to be cool, man. Oh, get this. This is something this is getting to a part that I really enjoy. In August, Mr. Fain sent each company a list of demands, including higher wages, improved benefits, a resumption of regular cost of living wage bumps to ward off the impact of inflation, and an end to a wage structure that leaves newer hires making a third less than veteran workers. Mr. Fain suggested as much as a 40% wage increase, noting that the chief executives of each of the companies had their compensation packages rise substantially in the last 4 years. I fully, wholly agree with that. 40% wage increase. Come on, just that'll catch us up with 1979. Article continues. He also called for contract provisions that would require the automakers to pay workers to do community service if the plant closes, describing it as a way to deter the companies from shuttering factories and to protect towns and local economies from being ravaged by the loss of a major employer. Listen to that. I love that. That's the first time I'd ever heard something like that in a UAW contract. So that's what's happening with the UAW. I really like the thought of that last provision, that last contract provision that President Fain is proposing. When I say that the workers easily deserve a 40% wage increase, I mean it. The auto industry was bailed out in 2009. The auto industry was bailed out in 1980. Why not? If the corporations can be bailed out, why can't the workers who keep the corporation afloat get the wages they deserve? So hats off to the UAW workers in the struggle. We're going to continue updating you on this struggle, but that's where things are at for now. So we're also going to continue reporting on Anderson Economic Group, because enough with this, man. That's the whole point too. Yeah, it is the whole point, to cost money, to cost these corporations money. That's how workers fight. That's how unions fight. They cost the corporations money. They cost them their precious profits that should have really just been wage increases. That's how you do this. So thanks for calculating the value of our labor, Anderson Economic Group, poorly. But whatever. We'll continue to report on this. I'll continue to get all worked up about this. It's all good. We will continue to report. Up next, Brian, we got you with American Airlines. What's going on over there?
All right, Rick and listeners, we have reported many times on a variety of different labor struggles, union struggles taking place or organizing drives in the many transportation sectors in the United States. And we have talked about in the past flight attendants and pilots, and here we are again with the American Airlines flight attendants vote to authorize a strike. And there's an AP News article, and it's also on their Facebook page, AFA-CWA. They are affiliated with the communication workers in Fort Worth, Texas. It's from the article is from Fort Worth, Texas. Flight attendants at American Airlines voted overwhelmingly to authorize union leaders to call for a strike, a move designed to put pressure on the carrier during negotiations over wages. The APFA, Association of Professional Flight Attendants, said that more than 99% of members who voted recently favored giving the union bargaining committee the power to call a strike. The union backed up the vote with picketing at several airports. Union President Julie Hendricks said the vote tells company management that flight attendants who have not received raises since 2019 are fired up. Executives, she said, ignore this strike vote at their peril. More information is available at facebook.com AFA-CWA. That's facebook.com AFA-CWA. And there's many photos and videos up there that can be shared and spread the word about this struggle. Not a strike yet, but there will also be other actions coming up, and look out for that on the AFA-CWA Facebook page and website and other social media. Also, pilots at Southwest Airlines and flight attendants at United Airlines picketed airports August 31st. So a lot going on there with the pilots and the flight attendants, as we heard a lot during the pandemic that corporations allegedly cared about employees. We knew that was a lie. And this included, of course, the flight industry and the transportation sector just got hammered during the pandemic. Many workers in extreme situations without being paid and having to stand by without a lot of movement happening in transportation during the pandemic, of course. And they are demanding now justice with their contracts and other demands related to that. And they deserve everything and more. All right, close with that, Rick. And again, to our listeners, thanks. Good to hear you today, Rick.
Yeah, that's right. Another industry that got bailed out, their airline industry, seriously. And when those things happen, one of the first things that happens is they turn around and ask the workers for concessions. So for American Airlines workers to ask for raises, for UAW workers to ask for raises, to Teamsters to demand better stated raises, right on. Like, that'll just get us caught up and let's fight for more. So hats off to all of those workers who have shown us how the struggle is done in recent history, to the Teamsters, to the auto workers, to the Starbucks workers, the Amazon workers, and all those workers who don't get their moment in the mass media. Hats off to all of you. If you find this show valuable and the stuff that we talk about on this show valuable, the current events, the labor theory, the labor history, the analysis, the interviews, if you find all this stuff valuable, please consider subscribing, please consider sharing, and please consider just talking about this podcast at your next union meeting, or talk about this podcast with a friend you talk about politics with, or labor with, or current events with. Thank you for listening always. We will come back to you next week. Solidarity and love to all, everyone. Have a good night.